The rest of the conversation, the global economy and emerging markets in the developing economies are losing access to the international bond market due to tightened credit conditions, mounting debt pressures, and fiscal weaknesses that have pushed lower-income countries into debt distress. According to the latest report from World Bank, the experts believe that the global economy is now in a fragile state, far from the dynamism required to address poverty, climate change, and human capital replenishment. The report reviews that a significant slowdown in global growth and increase in financial risk in emerging markets and developing economies due to elevated global interest rate is biting hard. According to a report, advanced economies are expected to see an especially pronounced growth slowdown from 2.7% in 2022 to 1.3% in 2023. Now, latest report shows that Nigeria's public debt increased from 73 trillion naira to 82 trillion naira after the unification of the exchange rate. Nigeria's total public debt rose by fiat to 82 trillion naira following the unification of the naira. It was 73 trillion before the unification. Although Nigeria's economy has been projected to grow between 2.8% and 3.2% in 2023. So the question is, how feasible is this projection, and can the country navigate through the current slowdown in the global economy, no thanks to huge mounting debt pressure? Right, for more insight, Ladipo Ajayi, head fixed income markets at Chapel Hindem Hand Limited, joins us virtually now. Thank you for your time. We appreciate you, Mr. Ajayi, for joining us. Now, thank you very much. Thank you. So let's get started from the local scene. If you look at the latest report, it shows that Nigeria's public debt increased from 73 trillion naira to 82 trillion naira after the unification of the exchange rate, as the total public debt rose by fiat to 82 trillion naira following that policy or directive. Now, remember, it was about 73 trillion naira before now. So what's the implication for the country with the fact that vis-a-vis the global economic headwinds that is being recorded?
Yeah, to be realistic, this is just mere translation of debt from dollars to naira. And it would also be right, if you actually want to judge very well, we have to also look at what is our expected revenue in dollars and also convert at the prevailing rate so as to actually be able to have a holistic view on the true data. This is simply just translation of currency, because at the same time, if you decide to actually convert Nigeria current debt status to maybe dollar, now you would notice that it would have dropped significantly from where it used to be. So this does not have much impact, because it's just merely the fact that you have just translated your devalue your currency, and as a result of that, that's actually pushed your total debt north. At the same time, you also look at it from the perspective that you also generate revenue in dollars, which will also be translated in the same manner. For example, if you look at this year's budget, we have a benchmark rate of around 470. If I'm actually very correct around that. But now that the market has been opened, there's every tendency that that will actually be adjusted as well. So it simply means that that is adjusted to about, let's say, about 650 or 700 about. It simply means that we'll get close to about 60% more revenue from what we have actually budgeted for in the year's budget. So it's not something to actually be bothered about, except the only issue would have been assuming Nigeria does not generate FX revenue, then it could have been a problem, because it's also it would mean that on your debt side, your debt has gone up, but on your revenue side, nothing has changed.
Okay. So what do you think is the implication of this for Nigeria? Because if you look at the emerging markets in the developing economies like Nigeria, are facing borrowing pressures. So how are tightening credit conditions and mounting debt pressures impacting emerging markets like Nigeria? And what are the implications for their access to the international bond market? Because it looks like developing economies like Nigeria are losing access to the international bond market.
Yeah, thank you very much, Frank. If you notice that when they were actually, I think earlier in the year, they asked the former Minister of Finance about the modality for funding this year's budget deficit. And you can remember vividly that she said categorically that Nigeria will not be going to Eurobond market to actually borrow. And one of the reasons why she mentioned that is because of the elevated yield level in the global Eurobond space. So it simply means that for Nigeria to actually access that window, we need to pay a premium, and also considering the current credit levels, the weakness in credit globally. We understand what's happening in Ghana. We'll see what happened in Kenya. We'll see what is springing up in Egypt. And some of those things that the concern that our foreign investors are actually having. And that's one of the reasons why it will actually be very difficult for any emerging market to actually approach the international market at this particular point in time to actually raise funds. And also, if you look at most of these emerging markets, if you check their debt to GDP ratio, most of them, they are north of 70%. And that is actually very, very disturbing. So it means that the capacity to actually be able to repay is actually very, very, very low. And also, if you have checked most of the rating agencies, like Fitch, like S&P, you've noticed that I think between last year and this year, they've downgraded most emerging markets, and that is as a result of the current economic circumstances in most of these countries. So I think, as we speak, it will be very difficult for anybody to actually approve the international market to raise funds. If you notice that before the Fed started this rate hike spree, you will notice that the interest rate was about 0.5%. So it simply means that anybody that wants to borrow in the international market will also use this as a baseline. But now it's not of 4%. So it means that when you are coming to the market, you are already budgeting that the base will be about 5% already before you start pricing in other risk elements like the emerging market risk, the liquidity risk, the credit risk, and other risk that is that you have to consider when you're talking about emerging market instruments.
Okay, so seeing the borrowing conditions in international market, it's very, very stringent now. Now, for instance, of course, just like what you said now, it has gone from 0.05% to 1%. So that's quite high. How easy do you think Nigeria will continue to borrow, to go that way? Are there any other options? Because debt, I mean, public debt it's around 82 trillion naira, like we said earlier. So that's another pressure on one side. On the international market, there's a pressure with rising rate. At home, the debt pressure is also to service debt, and the revenue is not improving. So what are the alternatives here? It looks like Nigeria is in a fix right now, right?
So there's for me, I think like I mentioned earlier, going to international markets is a no-go area for Nigeria to speak. And this is not peculiar to Nigeria. It's to almost all the emerging markets members because of the dynamics of the market as to speak. However, when you look at local space, you also agree with me that the federal government have been crowding out the local market. Because so what that would mean is that it will be very difficult for most of these corporates to actually access the market to actually raise funds, maybe to actually develop, to actually expand their businesses and other things that they will be needing funds for. And so the only window that's open to Nigeria, I think we need to actually adopt more fiscal responsibility. Because this is not a time where we need to throw cautions to the wind. And also, as you also mentioned earlier, we all agree that the cost of servicing debt in Nigeria is actually huge when you compare it to our revenue generating capacity. A country that where you use close to like about 98% of your revenue to actually service debt. So it tells you how much difficult we have been actually struggling in that regard. But the good news is that most of the things that's actually putting the burden on the government is what the government has tried to actually shape up. One of the key things, elephant in the room, still remains the subsidy. And imagine that we are still paying subsidy. It means that by the end of this month, we would have expected the house to actually sit on it for a supplementary budget for the remainder part of the year, which will be maybe another 3.5 trillion.